We're joined today by Russ Reiter, Superintendent of Oskaloosa Schools. Thanks for joining us, Russ.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So you got a couple more weeks before school starts. What was the district working on this summer?
The district's been involved in a couple of initiatives, and I myself have been trying to work on the budget. Next year's budget is actually going to be slightly smaller than this past year's. We're going to receive little money, or I should say less money, and so that's something we're going to have to be very careful of and very cognizant of. I think one of the major things we're looking at this past summer has been the incorporation of the preschool program into our Webster building. So when I look at where a lot of our energies have been focused, it's been at the Webster building and how we're working to improve our community preschool program, working with Kids Corner and the YMCA and Head Start, trying to make sure that we're providing a great atmosphere and a great educational environment for our little 4-year-olds.
So you said you're working with a lower budget this year. Is that due to enrollment?
It is. Our enrollments last year were the district's enrollment for any particular year is based upon the previous year's enrollment, and we were down slightly. And so with that, decreasing enrollment as well as the 2% allowable growth, we're actually going to be about $50,000 less this school year than we were last year. Part of that also has to do with the federal funds, because up until last year we were receiving some stimulus money, and that money's gone as well. So we're actually going to have to tighten our belts this year a little bit, look to see where we can continue to save money, become more efficient, and a number of things that might help us get through this next school year.
So you said you have about $50,000 less to work with. How is that going to come into play? Are you going to have to make any cuts on?
Well, we've made some cuts in regards to personnel, and typically that's where we look. We have some associate positions, we have some secretarial positions, we have some positions throughout the district where we're trying to become more efficient, such as in our central office at the George Daly Auditorium. My secretary for the past 2 years, Barb, has been retired at the end of this last year. So instead of replacing Barb full-time, we've replaced her with only a part-time individual.
Cuts are something you probably definitely don't want to do. You want to be growing. How are these numbers impacting kind of the goals that you have and the growth that you want to see for Oskaloosa schools?
Well, ultimately, we're always about student achievement, and our focus and the money that we do receive and the personnel that we have, we're always trying to do whatever we can to really emphasize what our kids are doing in the classroom. So we always concentrate on the student achievement and what our teachers can do to improve the instructional methods that they have. So that's where the focus has to be. We're always looking at, especially at the secondary level in our high school, we really are, with our one-to-one laptop program, trying to make sure that our teachers can use those computers effectively in the classroom. It's only a tool. And we can't teach the same way we did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because the computer, that tool really opens up a lot of opportunities for kids to learn and on how they learn, and it's different. So you know, we try to take the monies that we do have and try to focus them to make sure that we always try to improve student learning.
Speaking of one-to-one laptops, you had your first year completed last year. How do you think it went?
I think it went well. I'm not going to say and stamp anything about greatness, but I think it went well. There are always issues. We've been trying to prepare our teaching staff the last 2 to 3 years, having them go to professional development, having them go to other districts and see what other schools are doing and how other teachers are teaching with the computer. And so I think it went as well as can be expected. Do we want to see improvements? Absolutely. Do we want to continue to use those computers in a more effective manner? Absolutely. But I think overall we are changing what we're doing. We're changing how we're teaching. We hope that you know, it's making a difference in the classroom. Time will tell. When we look at assessments, we look at the Iowa assessment that's now been developed. And I think the other thing that we have to concentrate on is when you take a look at students who are attending, we saw a decrease in discipline issues. We saw an increase in attendance at the high school level, and whether we can attribute that to the joy of learning and students coming to school and wanting to be here, hard to tell. But you know, those are two factors that we have seen, and those are positives.
Iowa didn't get a waiver for No Child Left Behind. How do you think that's going to play out with, I mean, Oscalosa's test scores are below what federal standards say they should be right now. How do you see this playing out?
Right now, personally and professionally, I look at it and it's politics. You know, all we can do as a superintendent of the district and as administrators in our school district, working with our staff and our faculty, we're going to go to school every day. We're going to do the very best we can, try to make sure that our teachers are equipped and have everything that they need to make sure that when their kids walk into their classroom, they can do the best job they can, build great relationships with those kids, provide the information, inspire the kids to go out and do the best they can and to get you know, the education that they deserve and that they need to be ready and successful for the next decade. That No Child Left Behind waiver, it's a situation where the number of students that are to be proficient and that goal that was set by the federal government, I think the Iowa model that was produced, though it was not approved at this time, actually, even though it gives us a couple of more years, it's as stringent. It's as tough as the No Child Left Behind. And again, it's just a matter of time before, under federal program, 100% of the schools are going to be in the same situation we are. Because speaking of 100% proficiency for every single child, for every school district, it's almost next to impossible. When you have students who might be with physical or mental handicaps and disabled, you know, it makes it very, very difficult. You have pockets of poverty that generation after generation after generation makes it very, very difficult in some areas within the country and even within the state of Iowa. So it's a constant battle. Do we try to do the very best we can? Absolutely. Do we want to hit every child? Absolutely. Are we always going to be successful? Human nature tells me it's not probably going to happen.
So last year was also the first year you guys did use the Iowa assessments. How did you feel that went, that those tests compared to the ones you had done in the past?
Well, it was different. It was different, no doubt about that. Typically, when we looked at the old ITBS or the ITEDs that the secondary level kids took, we were comfortable with them. We kind of knew what to expect, the type of questions that were being asked. Now we bring in the Iowa core, and we're teaching to that Iowa core, and they're telling us that the Iowa assessments are to match what the Iowa core is.
And what is the Iowa core?
The Iowa core is the state curriculum that was being implemented and has been put forth to all the school districts. So that Iowa core, those specific things that are to be taught at each grade level, the subjects that are to be taught at each grade level up until high school, and then when you get to high school, you know, what year do the kids take that algebra and algebra 2 and geometry and kinesiology or statistics and calculus and physics and chemistry 2. So that Iowa core is the guideline from kindergarten through 6th grade, through our middle school and through the high school of what is to be taught, not necessarily how it's going to be taught, but what is to be taught at what level. And so that kind of now is our framework. The Iowa assessments are to match what is being taught. In the past, it's been, I hate to use the word crapshoot, but in the past, a lot of schools taught different things at different grade levels. And so if a student traveled from a 3rd grade here to a 4th grade in another district, that district may have taught the same thing in 3rd grade that the other student might have been learning in 4th grade. So now across the state anyway, it's supposed to even everything out and make fundamentally the same type of curriculum in every school district. So now the Iowa assessments come along and say, hey, whatever grade level we're in, the things that are being taught, here's what every 3rd grade student in Iowa should know. Let's test those 3rd graders based upon that. But you know, the test has changed. It's not so much about recall anymore. It's more about critical thinking, getting kids to think, problem solve. And so we have to continue to look at those Iowa assessments and make sure that we're teaching the skills that are necessary so that those kids, when they do take the Iowa assessments, can be successful.
So looking for the upcoming school year, are there any goals that the district has?
There are a number of goals. We have our our hands on several initiatives right now. We look at the elementary, want to continue with our PBIS, our positive behavior support system. We're going to continue working in very small groups at each grade level. We're trying to make sure that our classroom sizes, especially in our primary grades, are staying low, somewhere in that 18, 19, 20 range. We hired an extra teacher, making sure that we can try to keep those grades, classrooms, with small numbers. Middle school, they're continuing to work on quadrant D lessons, which are a lot of higher level thinking skills, critical thinking, along with a number of other things. High school, again, one-to-one laptop initiative that we have, making sure that our teachers are effectively using those laptops in the classroom. So, those are still the things that we're trying to concentrate on. How do you get the biggest bang for the dollars that we're spending is very important. And so we're simply trying to say, when kids come into the classroom every day, our teachers need to be prepared. They need to make sure they have multiple ways of teaching a particular matter or a subject to make sure that you hit the diverse learners. I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen over the last 20, 25 years, in that years ago a teacher would come in, teach the subject, and if a kid if a kid would understand how that teacher is teaching, whether it be visual, auditory, whatever, or hands-on, the kid may or may not have learned. Today, our teachers are going into a classroom trying to teach to the wide variety of learning styles, whether it is a visual learner, whether it's an auditory learner, whether it's a hands-on learner. We're trying to provide methods so that all kids can learn in their style. So that's been a big change. Been a lot more work for our teachers, but it's been productive.
Are there any issues that parents should be keeping their eye on, things that either political issues out of the State House or anything like that that might be affecting their kids in Oskaloosa schools?
Well, I think really the two big things when you take a look at parent and parental support, one, yeah, they really do need to make sure they keep in touch with what's happening at the State House and the governor's office and the state legislature, because it is going to impact them over the next 2 to 3 years. There's the reform efforts that are taking place right now. Last year they were very grandiose. They were some ideas that I think ultimately would be very helpful for education. Very little was actually done. Very little at the State House, through the legislature and through the governor's office, was accomplished in any type of reform effort. But parents do need to keep in touch and know continually what's going on. I think the second thing that parents can do really is a matter of stay in touch with the school and your teacher and your child's teacher. If you're in the secondary level in the high school and you can get on the computer and see your child's grades and what they're accomplishing, what they're not accomplishing, use that parent portal through our Infinite Campus system. The other thing is when you have parents primarily at those primary grades in the elementary, be at home with your children at night and read. Stay in contact with what those teachers are doing and read with your children before they go to bed. Make sure if your child's in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade and they have homework assignments, somehow you know what those assignments are and those children are getting it done, and you can check it over and look at it and say, excellent job. If they have questions, they could ask you. But when they go back to school the next day, hopefully they have their assignments done. Hopefully those things are done, and those kids can go back to school with a sense of pride knowing that they could accomplish that. But stay in contact with your teacher, and if there's ever questions, please contact the school.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
You're welcome. Appreciate it.
We'll just